Hello and welcome back everyone to my Fantastic Four review. I'm Gocarlo and I really enjoyed this movie, guys. This was one of Marvel's oldest and most classic superheroes. Really, the Fantastic Four is even older than Spider-Man, and I felt like this movie was a great introduction to introduce anybody to Marvel's first family. But alright, I really enjoyed this film. Okay, I'm gonna go right out the gate. I thought it had vibes along the lines of Star Wars, and people are comparing it to the classic Phase 1 Marvel movies, and it definitely harps back to the classically made superhero movies that we all grew up with and loved. But a big part of this movie's charm is actually that it was made using a lot of classic techniques, and it really gave it a good feel. Not only that the movie itself takes place in the 1960s, that's the time period of stuff like the Beatles, and just the way that the characters acted and everything, like Mr. Fantastic, played as Pedro Pascal. He's such a famous actor. He's been in a lot of stuff, like, of course, The Mandalorian, but he played a little bit of a different role in this movie. He really channeled a lot of classic actors, and so did Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman. I thought she brought something new to the Marvel universe, and she's a great addition. And I thought she was perfect as Sue Storm. And the rest of the actors too, playing The Thing, and Joseph Quinn as the Human Torch, Johnny Storm. But I want to start getting into the movie, spoilers and all. But I really enjoyed this movie for what it was. Maybe not everyone could get into it, but I thought that the movie definitely, I don't want to say too much without getting into spoilers. Alright guys, I want to let loose, so the spoilers are starting now. We're going to discuss the whole movie from beginning to end, so don't forget, leave a like, comment, tell me what you think, what were your thoughts on the movie, what did you like, what didn't you like, and please share the review and enjoy. Alright, so the movie starts off with Reed Richards and Sue Storm getting the news after taking a pregnancy test that they're pregnant with their first child. And this is a very human scene because this isn't about superheroes, and we're getting to grow with them. This is very much the beginning, and it's all up from here. But also the beginning of this movie actually plays out a lot like a documentary. You actually get to see some documentary type footage. You get to see some archival footage of what looks like the first space launch done by the Fantastic Four. Now, this is something I will say about the movie, is stuff like Star Wars, and going back to even the original Star Wars, that movie won us over with going to space. So it's not, I don't always buy into just going into space, but this movie really builds up to it. And you're seeing that they're the first ones to go into space. Like this was history being made. And I'm pretty sure that they actually used some 8mm, 16mm film in the making of this scene. And just the pacing of this opening scene, it's cut together so beautifully and so fast paced with so much action. This opening is actually a sneak peek on Disney Plus. And remember guys, I've seen this movie 4 times now for the Fantastic Four, and every time you watch it, there's more to notice. So I've seen it in RPX, I've seen it in IMAX, and I've seen it 2 more times. And each time I've noticed different things, but we're going to get into that. But something I'll say here is I've actually walked in late after this opening sequence, and I had to go back again because I had to see that opening again. I needed to see it from beginning to end. But even walking this movie a little later is awesome because you're along for the ride. Sometimes skipping the intro with this movie is good too. I've experienced that also. But the movie does graze over real fast how they got their powers, and it skips right to a special effects sequence where we see Mr. Fantastic stretching, and you see the Thing and the Human Torch saving a big boat in the river. And there's also callbacks to classic villains. And one scene that I didn't notice in the sneak peek of Disney Plus, there was a scene where they actually recreated the original Fantastic Four comic book cover. And that was amazing to see. You also get a little bit of the Fantastic car. But I will say, guys, I don't want to say too much, but this opening sequence is actually one of the main action sequences and one of the main special effects sequences in the movie. But don't worry, there is more to come. But I will say, on your first viewing, this introduction wins you over, and you're sitting there catching your breath. You're so excited after that intro. You and your friends are just looking at each other like, all right, let's get started. Let's go. We're here for the ride. So that's where the movie starts to breathe a little bit. You see Reed Richards teaching his studies, and you see that Sue Storm is actually really involved in world peace, and sometimes she uses her powers to avoid people with the invisibility. But it's at that point we get the title sequence and everybody's applauding the Fantastic Four. All 4 of them are shown in their costumes, and it's at this point the movie begins. So the first scene that starts here is the Fantastic Four get together for family dinner. Now, one thing I'll notice is it is very retro and vintage. The decorating of the houses is very, very vintage. But how I can explain it is the Fantastic Four, they're superheroes. So, of course, they have technology that no one else has. And I see it as the Fantastic Four are the ones with the technology. But this scene is important because this is where Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman, Sue Storm, and Reed Richards, this is when they announce to their family of the Thing and Johnny Storm that they're pregnant with their first child. And another thing I'll note is Johnny Storm and Sue Storm are brother and sister. So some people might think that that's actually the son, but no, that's actually the brother and brother-in-law. All right, and I guess the next thing that I must comment on is the next scene is a scene between Johnny Storm and Reed Richards, and this is between Pedro Pascal and Joseph Quinn. And Joseph Quinn is a great actor, and he had a lot of fun playing the Human Torch, Johnny Storm. He was really charming, and he was really funny, and it was just a great character. He was having a lot of fun playing up this role, channeling these really macho men, and he had a lot of swagger with it. But he's really a hothead, no pun intended, and he's just trying to live up to Reed Richards, and you'll see that a lot throughout this movie. You also get a little bit of the feel for this world. They're using record players, but they're a little more futuristic. And that was a lot of fun for me, using a lot of vinyl recently, to see them using it. but later on in the movie they use it in some fun ways. Next we get a scene with Mr. Fantastic and Sue Storm where they're actually running tests on their baby. Because they both have superpowers, they want to know, is the baby going to have superpowers? And right now, the signs are saying no. And we get some cool special effects here using her superpowers. They get to X-ray and see the baby. Next is a scene where we get to see the human side of Ben Grimm, the Thing, where he actually entertains some children outside the school by picking up a car. He doesn't destroy it. That's what I was actually looking out for in this scene. Not a scratch on the car, actually. Because, yeah, nowadays that wouldn't fly. But back then, who knows? But he actually makes a friend, and just the feel of New York and the tone of the characters, and it's an enjoyable scene. So the Thing made a friend, and the actress here is a famous actress, and I like how they're saying Maisie's, and then it's actually spelt out that way too. I noticed. There's a funny line. They said, "Say the thing." He says, "I don't say it. That's only in the cartoon." Now, guys, next thing I want to point out is this movie is so mastercraftily made. So this movie is made so well, and the pacing of it. This isn't a long movie. This is under 2 hours, I'm pretty sure, if not 2 hours. And I'm actually thinking, what if the movie was longer? If the movie was longer, I don't think the movie needed to be longer. I think it's actually a perfect time, and the pacing and the flow of the movie, everything just flows, and everything is put together and everything fits together so well. But next is another funny scene with Joseph Quinn where he gets the Johnny Storm out of the cereal box. A lot of good it's a really good matchup between Johnny Storm and the Thing. So next they go up to the balcony. Hold on, let me make sure I'm not missing anything. And last thing I'll comment on before we go any further is Herbie, the robot. I thought it was Kirby, but it's Herbie, and he's great. He looks great on film. A lot of fun to look at. And you don't know if it's CGI or real, but apparently it's real. They had it on the red carpet. But what happens next is the Fantastic Four, at least the rest of them, notice that there's a lot of crime and how is it being dealt with. Well, Reed Richards actually has it under control. This was his doing, and he has it all under control. But what happens next? This is where the movie really begins. This is where the movie really shines. So this is when it looks like the apocalypse is raining down on Earth real quick. So Johnny Storm flies off to find the source of the problem, and it's revealed it's the new Silver Surfer, Shia LaBeouf. So the rest of the Fantastic Four arrive in Times Square circa 1960. The Thing and the Invisible Woman drift when they pull up in the Fantastic car. And this is a classic scene. This whole movie is an instant classic, but this is when she reveals she heralds Galactus, and she says our Earth is doomed. She says our Earth will be destroyed. And the next thing I want to talk about is the scene that happens next. The scene that happens next is Johnny Storm races off and he catches the Silver Surfer. But I want to compare this to a scene in the other recent superhero movie, Superman. So there's a scene where Superman actually gets captured, and how he breaks free from the bad guys. They're actually hanging on to him. Superman actually flies up through all the altitudes into space, and you actually feel the wind as he's flying through. But there's a lot more weight behind the scene in Superman, but I like how in Fantastic Four, the scene was a lot simpler and faster, and you can almost feel the anime power level with how much faster the Human Torch was. But something else I want to talk about is there's nothing like seeing a Marvel movie for the first time. The first time you're watching it, you're really absorbing every second because things are about to change and they're introducing so much to you. So the first time you're watching this, you're on the edge of your seat every second. But this movie is such a good movie. It wins you over the first time you watch it, and it's still good on repeat viewings. But it's one of those movies, man, just like Back to the Future, just like all of your favorites. It's got such a great story. And what's to come is, I will say, why wait for later to say this, but this movie really, this movie's real strengths is really their smarts over their strength. I said early on already that the action sequences are not that many. They're actually more focused, but trust me, there's a big one. But really, what wins you over is the story, and they really win with their smarts rather than their strength. But even the action, this movie really shines being very classic and using classic old film techniques. And even with the modern technology, I felt like they're calling it back to the early days of Hollywood, and even some film serials, and great, just using simple effects. This movie was just simple and effective and focused, and even the effects, great use of slow motion, really, really well-timed cuts, and just simple storytelling, great storytelling. But the next scene, Johnny Storm reveals to the Fantastic Four that the Silver Surfer actually spoke to him. But he can't understand her, so moving forward, the rest of the movie, he's gonna try and learn how to talk to the Silver Surfer. And this is another classic scene that happens next, of him trying to convince the rest of the family that they got something going on. I'm pretty sure there's even a good line by Mr. Fantastic. I doubt she was naked. It's definitely a polyurethane. And one more detail I want to notice is, and I don't know, I love this stuff, and I hate to point it out for you guys if you don't want to know, but a lot of these actors, Joseph Quinn and Vanessa Kirby, they're actually English, so they actually speak with an accent, but they play it great with the American accent, so you can't even tell. So the next scene, Mr. Fantastic introduces to Johnny Storm that they're going to be going to space and their new spacesuits are ready. But I noticed he actually does point out some details to not activate his flames the whole time, because that'll actually deplete his oxygen. So that's a detail moving forward to keep your eye out for. We get another quick scene of The Thing. He goes to visit his friend, but at the last second, he gets second thoughts and turns around. How can I explain this? He actually got it the worst out of any superhero because it really deformed him. Other superheroes can still have their appearances, but he got transformed into rocks, so it's not actually very often he gets friends outside of his family, and he didn't want other people to look at her weird or whatever if they think he's a freak. So he actually sacrificed his own happiness, and everybody hates this scene. Everybody wants him to be happy, and it was a sad scene. So we get some scenes of Mr. Fantastic and Sue Storm while they're pregnant with their first child. And this is all leading up to the space launch. They're going to be going into space to find Galactus and put a stop to Galactus. So again, you can feel the excitement, the whole world is behind them, and they're doing another space launch, and it's very classic. Even the spacesuits are replicas of the original Apollo space launches. Another detail I gotta point out, the ship itself is called the Excelsior, after Stan Lee would always say that, right? But again, I'm not sure about a lot of the details, like if this is actually what the ship is called in the comics. And even comic readers, you might actually recognize these stories that they pieced together to make this movie. This space scene is really one of my favorite parts of the movie. And this is one of the scenes that really stands out. There's a lot of love behind this sequence. There's a lot of inspiration, and it pays a lot of homage to countless classic movies. What happens is they're on course until the Silver Surfer finds them. And the Thing has to have a great line here and get the last jab, Johnny Storm, with Johnny, your girlfriend's here, when the Silver Surfer joins them in the ship. But I did notice that they're also getting sucked into Galactus's ship, and I felt like the Thing felt like he could have got away, but he was listening to Reed Richards' commands, so he had to obey. Even when they're captured, it's very suspenseful. They start scanning the pregnant invisible woman, and they scan, x-ray the child, and it feels very much like the original Star Wars, where they're on course to Alderaan, but they get sucked in by none other than the Death Star. But that is a great homage. That is a great homage to the original Star Wars, and I love it. I appreciate it. They also go through an asteroid field. That scene is very much inspired, I felt like, if not a recreation, from some of the stuff from Empire Strikes Back. And it's at this point they land on Galactus' ship, and there's actually a great Easter egg here. So of course Pedro Pascal has been in so many movies, but one of my favorites is the Mandalorian series. So in that series, he has a helmet, a Star Wars helmet, and so basically what I want to say is when they're in space here, they're wearing their spacesuits, and I feel like they were actually mindful of this. Pedro Pascal, or Mr. Fantastic, has the first few words before the rest of the family chimes in, but with the filter from having the helmet on in space, I felt like it definitely was a callback to The Mandalorian. And I'm pretty sure in the credits, Lucasfilm is actually credited for some sound effects and stuff. So throughout this film, I will take note of more callbacks to Star Wars, especially in the sound department. And I guess now is another point for me to say, this movie definitely did shine in the theater. I did see it in RPX, I saw it in IMAX, and I saw it a few times. But the sound really stole the show in a lot of points, and I was really happy to see it with the sound. But again, I thought Mr. Fantastic was in space and talking with the sound effects on his voice. I thought it sounded just like The Mandalorian, which was welcome. We get a classic scene now of the Human Torch with his flames talking to the Silver Surfer on Galactus' ship, and he goes back to the rest of the group and they said, how'd it go? And he goes, it went well, it went very well. Classic scene. But it's here where we meet Galactus, who we have been waiting so long to see portrayed in the movies. And to me, I'm wondering, did the movie live up to you guys? Was it what you imagined? But for me, this lived up to what I thought, and this was how I imagined. The scale and the grandness of Galactus and the way he was portrayed, the sounds, the weight, I thought they knocked it out of the park. The way his eyes light up. Just the size of him in the movie theater. I was talking about the sound a moment ago, but to see Galactus on the big screen in the movie theater was definitely a highlight. And every time you go back, it's so much fun. Another thing I will say, every time you go back to see the movie, it's fresh for these theaters. Everybody's clapping and applauding. So, all right, a few things I want to mention. They're at Galactus now, but this movie is actually very focused, and how they made it had to be very thought out because, all right, we had the opening sequence. We see all these scenes on the different sets of the Fantastic Four house, the laboratory. But this is one big special effects sequence where they're on Galactus's ship or planet, and this is a big scene in the movie. This takes up a chunk of the movie. But they're at Galactus, and they thought that their baby wasn't going to have any superpowers, but Galactus assures them that their child has cosmic powers, and basically he's the next Galactus. And I noticed that it's here that Galactus actually breaks the water of Sue Storm, and he says that he'll spare the Earth in exchange for their child. And of course, Reed Richards and Sue Storm are going to protect their child, and they're not going to give him up. That is the core of this story. Is I think anybody can relate to that. Going to great lengths, any length, to protect your family. Not just and not just being a parent. Even Johnny Storm in the thing, going when the odds are stacked against you. It doesn't matter what it is. When the odds are stacked against you, especially those odds, you're going to push and you're going to protect. So what happens here? They need to save themselves. So it's a race to the ship, and some of the members, like the Thing and Johnny Storm, they easily get pushed around by the Silver Surfer, but she's the one who's able to push around the Silver Surfer using her telekinetic powers. But this is also the beginning of when you see the Silver Surfer really pushing their special effects and surfing through space. So they make it to the ship, and this is when all hell breaks loose. They're trying to escape the Silver Surfer, and this is very much like Star Wars. You got the robot making beeps like R2-D2. You got the pregnant lady who turned into Chewbacca screaming, and you got everyone doing their part like Han Solo and Luke Skywalker. And it's very much inspired by Empire Strikes Back. Even when they land on Galactus' ship and they step out, I felt like that was very much like the Empire Strikes Back when they land on what they didn't know was a creature. This you're on the edge of your seat. I enjoyed this sequence so much. Very inspired by Star Wars. And they have to fly along a black hole, and the Silver Surfer almost gets them, but the Invisible Woman is able to turn the whole ship camouflage, and they're able to escape the Silver Surfer, and the Silver Surfer actually falls into the black hole. And this is a great scene. It's zero gravity, suspense. You got Johnny and the Thing firing the turrets like the Millennium Falcon in Star Wars, and they're even hollering things out just like them. And it's crazy. It's a zero gravity birth being given right now. And there's a great scene upside down of Mr. Fantastic helping Sue Storm, and the Thing is cutting the umbilical cord, and they give birth to baby Franklin. I thought it was a great scene. There's zero gravity birth, but you need gravity to push. And it's at this point the Fantastic Four has arrived back to Earth, heroes. The Earth expecting them to tell them that they defeated Galactus. And it's very much a scene out of historical footage or a documentary where they landed back on Earth after a successful mission. They arrive at the press conference, and we've been on the mission with them. We know what they know, but they just say that they haven't prepared anything, and that's a sign for things to come, that this press conference is going to go wrong. So the first thing they ask is, how did they stop Galactus? And they reveal they didn't stop Galactus. And what did Galactus want? He asked for the child, and they'll spare the Earth, and everybody freaks out. It's a funny scene because everybody's turning on the Fantastic Four, but you gotta, what's the word I'm looking for? You gotta feel for them. You gotta know what they're going through, that of course they can't make the trade. So again, guys, I will say this movie is so put together so well, and the pacing is so good, but this is actually where things slow down. The first half is very strong, and not that the second half is weak, but this section slows down a little bit. But remember, guys, the pacing is so well, everything's put together so well, and it won't take long until we're at the grand finale, and it definitely is a grand finale for us this time. So now Sue Storm is a mother, but she's not pregnant anymore, and she's back in action. Johnny Storm is showing her his findings, and he's using a bit of a hybrid of new technology and old technology. It's kind of like, imagine if you were able to throw new audio files onto a record player and play them. That's what he was doing. We get some powerful scenes of Mr. and Mrs. Fantastic with their child, and the odds are stacked against them. So she's just very much stressed out and lashing out at him, and it's not easy. He has to determine and take into account all the odds and all the outcomes. But both actors do a great job in this movie. They definitely play the role of Mr. and Mrs. Fantastic. He talks about their plan being available as they already have a solution. But what does Sue Storm do? She wins the crowd over by introducing them. This is Franklin. And she actually lets us into a little bit more of her backstory, that her and Johnny's parents passed away in a car crash, or at least one of them did. And I felt like what this scene does is, the scene puts you in a dilemma, and it's a little bit annoying. You feel for them. The world is being annoying. There's a conflict. The world is against them, but this actually puts a resolution to that annoying. So Reed Richards further develops his plans, and he builds teleporters to be able to teleport the Earth, and it shows that they've definitely won over the Earth, especially after the last scene. You see how everything's put together? I understand now. The last scene was them winning back over the Earth and introducing them to their child and winning their trust back. And this next scene, because they won the Earth's trust back, the Earth pays them back with, they're going to conserve enough power to power these teleporters. And there's also a touching scene of Reed Richards and baby Franklin, where he explains, everybody wants their children to be like them, but I don't want you to be like me. He says there's something wrong with me, and maybe that's something to be revealed in further movies. We also get a look at Johnny Storm and his research, trying to live up to Reed Richards, and he's able to quote philosophy just as well. But just when you thought everything was going according to plan, the Silver Surfer comes and destroys the teleporters all over the world. But Johnny was waiting for this moment to see Shalabal again, and he reveals he can understand her and he knows the origin of her story. So she was actually in a similar situation. She wanted to protect her own planet, so she joined Galactus, and Galactus turned her into the Silver Surfer. And by the way, the Silver Surfer is separate from the surfboard. It's not all one entity. And again, I thought it was a simple but effective special effects sequence of her turning into the Silver Surfer. And I thought the Silver Surfer herself was a great character. You were always wondering how are they going to do a female Silver Surfer once they announced it, but I thought it worked. And again, it was simple and effective. And that is the beauty of this movie. This movie has so much. I enjoyed what they put together, the way they put it together, and what is there is so awesome, and I can learn so much from it, and I'm so inspired. Now, after fighting the Silver Surfer, they really have to, the plan really hits them that they need to use Baby Franklin as the bait to lure Galactus, to be able to teleport Galactus away. So Sue Storm does not want to do this, but she understands that they're out of options. Also, with the help of the Mole Man, they're able to save the whole world and put them into shelter and bring them to Subterranea. One thing I will note is apparently the Mole Man had more scenes that were cut out. But again, I was thinking, the movie being longer, everything worked with the pacing that it had. The movie is very focused, and they win with their smarts over their strength. And it has action, but it flows perfectly. And if they added more scenes, more world building, yes, we would have enjoyed it. But for the overall pacing of the movie, I think I understand. That got cut, and if I can remember some other scenes that they talked about that got cut. Honestly, probably the Thing's friend. Well, I think we do get another scene with her that I didn't mention so far, but yeah, I felt like she might have had a bigger presence, maybe in the upcoming movies. But she really does add a lot to the character, and she's a necessary part of the movie to show us the human side of the Thing and to really give him some heart. So this is when Galactus arrives to Earth, and this does not disappoint. This is why you have to see this in the movie theater. It gives you all the feelings you get from Godzilla, and this is Galactus. He towers over New York City. You see the shadow just covering Manhattan, and even his size and scale, he's in the ocean, he's in the water, and it goes up to his chest. And once he steps foot in New York, he just digs right into the ground and grabs a handful of the dirt, and even the water makes a splash and floods the city when he arrives. And this is the scene that really sticks out to me with the sound in the movie theater. And I'm pretty sure if you see this in IMAX, it will change the aspect ratio and the cinematic borders. And so he makes his way towards the child, and it's secretly a trap. But this is where the grand finale begins, and this is really where the special effects were saved for. We get a great moment of the Invisible Woman and Johnny Storm combining their powers, and Ben Grimm also helps set Galactus on fire, and they're shooting his eyes out. But Galactus actually knocks down the Invisible Woman, and he crashes her car. This is one of my favorite scenes where Mr. Fantastic jumps in, and there's a great use of slow motion. There's that classic effect, and he actually climbs up Galactus, I don't know, like Shadow of the Colossus. But this is where Galactus uses Mr. Fantastic's greatest strength into his greatest weakness, I saw someone call it. He stretches out Mr. Fantastic. Usually that's his strength, but now it's his weakness. Meanwhile, I didn't mention that Galactus was able to grab the thing and throw him so far, he flew into space. But good thing we had Johnny Storm to fly and catch him before it was too late. And now they're flying back through the orbit, and they got some momentum and speed, and they ushered the famous classic line, say the line, "It's clobbering time!" And you could actually recreate this in the Marvel Rivals game, and they're able to hit Galactus, and he sets Mr. Fantastic free. But it's at this point that the Fantastic Four is knocked down, and Galactus goes after Baby Franklin after they swapped him out, thinking that they were going to be able to outsmart Galactus. Galactus goes to the Fantastic Four tower, and he just grabs Baby Franklin, destroying the wall and the building. And here's where I felt like they used some Star Wars sounds. During that scene, I could have swore I heard some sound effects from Star Wars. Alright, so once Galactus takes Baby Franklin, nothing is going to stop the Invisible Woman. She's got the strongest powers of the whole Fantastic Four, and she's able to grab Galactus with it. And she's able to hold him back. And one thing I have to say, I keep using the word classic and simple, but even the Invisible Woman's powers, a lot of it uses your imagination, and a lot of it comes through the actress themselves. They're giving us that energy through that performance, and just the simple special effects and the effect that they achieved, it works so well, all that together, and we love to see it again and again. We never get enough of it. It's so much fun. So the Invisible Woman is able to push Galactus back, and the rest of the team scrambles to save Baby Franklin, and this is an epic moment. Again, the Mr. Fantastic using his powers to stretch, and the scene is all one take, no cuts. You see him seamlessly and fluently grab the child, and his limbs stretching to save them. And the Invisible Woman used a lot of their powers, and they're knocked back, and it seems like they saved the day. Until Galactus is powerful. You can't underestimate him. So he comes back through the black hole. And Johnny Storm is a hothead again, no pun intended. And he's so fast to throw his life on the line of duty. He's so hot-headed, it makes you mad. You don't want to see him do anything stupid. But he's about to sacrifice himself when suddenly the one he was able to break through to, the Silver Surfer, Shala Ball, protects him, and she decides that now it's her duty to fight Galactus, and she helps save the day. At this point, the movie had to get emotional even more, and it seemed that, and the battle took the life of Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman. And in life, you can't come back from death. But this is a movie, and the magic powers of Baby Franklin brought them back to life. But this shows that the Fantastic Four have been to hell and back, and this is only the beginning. So it shows that they're here to stay, and they're strong, and they're here to protect us. But it also shows you that there is a universe where Sue Storm did die, but this shows you to be grateful and to be thankful and love everyone around you and not take them for granted. And that's one of the lessons that I want everybody to take away from that, and the lengths that they went to protect baby Franklin, and everyone can relate to that. And at the end of the movie, it brings us all together to once again be grateful and be thankful. And again, it shows you that we were along for the ride with these characters, and Sue Storm, Vanessa Kirby, did a wonderful job. She was definitely the mother of this team. And it was emotional. It was very emotional. And at the end of it, even the baby claps. Everybody was clapping at the end of this. After that, they're about to appear on a talk show, but at the last second, they ditch it. And it's a funny scene. The Human Torch brings up again about the Silver Surfer. The surfboard isn't a part of her body. And they try to make baby Franklin wear the 5th member jumpsuit, but they say it's too soon for that. And there's a bit of an annoying, funny scene where the 3 men are trying to put the baby seat in. You want them to figure it out because you're along for the ride with them, and it's at that point they fly off into the sunset. That is the Fantastic Four. Seriously, guys, I thought it was well put together and simple and effective. I thought it had good lessons. I thought it was a good time. I thought the scenes were exciting, and I thought you could appreciate it. And I thought it was fun for what it is. And it's a great watch. You're on the edge of your seat. And that's not it yet. Because I will say that even the first thing in the movie, they show you what Earth you're on. Everything is 4s in this movie. They showed you 4 years before. And now the mid-credits scene, it's 4 years later. So you see the Invisible Woman, Sue Storm, actually reading books to baby Franklin. And the joke is that he reads the most advanced philosophy there is, and he's read it 5 times this week. And as soon as she takes her eyes off of him, none other than Dr. Doom appears, and you get a glimpse of the new mask, and it shows you baby Franklin has powers that all the supervillains are interested in honing. So that's where the movie ends, and I'm sure they did announce that it is actually Robert Downey Jr. who was in that scene. And they're already working on Avengers Doomsday. That's what it announced here, that the Fantastic Four will appear in Avengers Doomsday. We're not sure how. This movie the whole time had me predicting time travel, and points of the movie it has to be predictable, but then it's gonna throw a loop. It's gonna throw you a twist. But wow, what do I rate this movie? I favor this movie very highly. I favor the movie higher than I want to rate it because I'm not sure everybody is meant to love this movie, or I think everybody is meant to love it. I think everybody should love it, but I don't think everybody's going to agree. And not everybody's going to have the same opinions. I felt like the movie was very classic. For some people, it might be boring. It was a very emotional movie, but no, I loved it and I appreciate it, and I think it's an instant classic, and I'm a big appreciator of this movie. So the movie was directed by Matt Shakman, and he made WandaVision, and that set the tone for the retro vintage feel of the film. And I loved all the actors, and I loved how they put together this film. And what do I rate it though? The rating, honestly, I would give it an 8. But I favor it very highly. It's going to be on my favorites list, but maybe also a 7.5. I rated Superman a 7, but Superman definitely had more action and special effects sequences. But Fantastic Four definitely won in its story, and its smarts over its strength and its substance. But Superman had a lot of great action and special effects and charm and funny scenes. You can't underestimate Superman. But Fantastic Four, the weight of the story meant more. Like, Superman had to work harder to win you over, and Fantastic Four held more weight with the story. But Superman and both left you wanting more, so we still want. Superman introduced the series, and so did this, but the Marvel Universe and how deeply it's all connected with each other, that could be a reason why Fantastic Four held more weight. And every second we're anxiously waiting for the next thing that they're introducing to us. So one last thing, I think the only thing I didn't comment on is the score of the film. I love the Fantastic Four main theme that they came up with. Fantastic Four. It's very addicting, and even the other bits of music. Bum 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 bum. I would like to listen to the soundtrack of the film to break it down more. But comparing it to Superman, I feel like the two films actually take a similar approach. The Superman movie has the Superman theme, and that's iconic. But Fantastic Four, they actually had to create a brand new theme. But either way, those themes both are the main music used throughout these films. And I guess both films didn't really use much more of a soundtrack of music, but Superman did at the end, and I didn't actually care much for it. I didn't think it fit because the rest of the movie didn't really use a lot of music cues. So I didn't understand the random choice at the end. I thought it was very much a last minute choice of music that didn't really fit the rest of the movie, but we all kind of make editing choices like that sometimes. But Fantastic Four, I felt like maybe they couldn't really use a lot of music like that, especially for the tone of the film, getting the tone across and the time period. But I did want to just mention that both films took a similar approach, and yeah, they both used the theme of the character, the theme of the heroes, and they didn't really use much more music than that. But maybe I would have liked to see. I appreciate good music cues. I appreciate good scenes queued up to the music. But even without it, it wasn't that kind of movie, and it was able to achieve the tone. I guess that definitely lent a lot to the tone, was no music to take you out of it. But man, Fantastic Four, I've seen it 4 times now, and I've really been trying to dissect the movie's greatness. But that's not for everybody because of the magic of the movie. I'm a believer of keeping the magic of the movie and not watching it all the time. This movie does win you over. It's great, a first watch, a second watch, but I still want to watch it a few more times because just the vibe it gave me, like you're watching the original Star Wars in the movie theater, and I love the tone of it. Pedro Pascal did a great job of channeling classic movie actors, and they all did too. But man, that was my review. I want to know more what you guys think. I really tried to share a lot of my points of the movie. Maybe comic book fans could have saw this story coming, but I think that this was a great introduction for everybody to the Fantastic Four story and characters, and I thought it was a great story that blew my mind, and I can't wait for more like Avengers Endgame. But this has been me, Gocarlo. I'll see you guys in the next review. Fantastic Four was great. Fantastic Four was fantastic.